Hello, I'd like to go over the problems on the study guide, which was also given as a practice test in class. I'm going to start out with a couple of problems of particular interest I want to go over before getting into the actual pretest study guide questions. So, this first question states a farm is rectangular in shape. It is 2 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide. What is the area of the farm? So this is a pretty straightforward question. If we understand that the area of a rectangle is simply equal to length times its width, we'll multiply 2 by 3, and that'll give us an area of 6 square kilometers. And the work I'm showing here would suffice for explaining or showing your reasoning. Apologize for my dog barking. The farm is divided into 5 equal parts. Corn is grown in one of the parts. Draw a diagram to show where the corn is grown. So again, we know that this farm is rectangular in shape. And so all I need to do is divide the farm into 5 equal sections as best I can. Then I'll color in one of these equal sections here to represent where the corn is grown. Okay, the last part of this question asks us, what is the area of the part of the farm where corn is grown? Explain or show your reasoning. Well, oops, sorry about that. So we need to understand that we started out with an area of 6 kilometers, and then we divided that into 5 equal parts. So we can figure this out just by dividing 6 and 5. And if students remember the relationship between fractions and division problems, then they'll know that 6/5 would be the area of the part where the corn is grown. Or if they wanted to express that amount as a mixed number, they could do that as well. So 1 1/5 square kilometers would be the amount of space the corn is growing in, or the area of the farm where corn is growing. Okay, so the next question that I want to talk about as a uh, particularly interesting question states a hiking trail is 7 miles long. Han hikes one half of the trail, and then stops for water. Jada hikes 2/3 of the trail and then stops for water. So part A wants us to figure out how far Han hiked before stopping for water, and we want to make sure we're explaining or showing our reasoning. So what's happening here is one of the ways we could figure this out is either dividing 7 by 2, so finding half of 7, since we want to find half of the 7 miles that Han hikes before he stops for water. Or we could think about this as a multiplication problem. So 1/2 of 7 would also give us 7/2 miles. Likewise for Jada, we are um, finding some portion of um, the 7 miles, 2/3 of it, in fact. But because we're talking about 2/3, which is not a unit fraction, dividing it by 3 only finds us 1/3 of that distance. So multiplying 7 by 2/3 may be a more straightforward way for students to think about this particular question. So that would give us 14/3. But students are also always welcome to draw a picture. And I always tell students that drawing a picture kind of helps make sense of the problem. So if we focus on B, since um, that part of the question's a bit more complex, I'm going to draw 7 holes to represent 7 miles. You'll have to forgive that my holes are, well, let me try to do a better job here for space. Oops. Okay, so it looks like maybe I need to, I'll erase this here. This will give us plenty of space. Okay, so I'm going to draw 7 holes here. Each hole is going to represent 1 mile out of the total of 7 miles the 2 people hiked. Okay, and then so Jada hikes 2/3 of 7, so I'm going to split each of these miles into 2/3, and so we're considering 2/3 out of each mile that she hikes. And if we just count up all the thirds we have here, you'll see there's 14/3. And again, for both parts, if students want to express the fractions as mixed numbers, they're more than welcome to do so. Okay, so this question actually did come from the study guide practice test. 5 friends equally share 2 liters of water. How many liters of water does each person get? We want to make sure we're dividing 2 by 5 here because the 2 represents the liters of water, and the 5 friends are the equal number of groups we're going to be putting that water into. So each friend will receive 2/5 liters of water. Okay, the second question, write a division equation that matches the diagram. So we can see here, and I'll kind of highlight here. So each of these whole bars here, even though parts of it are white and parts of it are blue, they each represent 1 hole. And then each of those holes has been divided into 3 pieces. So if students were to put into writing the basics of what I just said, that would suffice for explaining their reasoning. They could say there's 4 holes, each hole is divided into 3 parts, and 4/3 of the holes are shaded in. That would be perfectly acceptable. Now we need to explain why 10 divided by 4 equals 10/4, and there's a lot of different ways students can go about thinking this. They could draw 10 holes, split them into fourths. They're considering 1/4 from each hole, so that would be a total of 10/4, which would prove that 10 divided by 4 does in fact equal 10/4. Or they could understand that 10 divided by 4 means that we are starting with 10 holes, and we're placing an equal amount from those 10 holes into 4 groups, which would also match the meaning of 10/4. The denominator tells us um, how many equal size groups there are. Any of those types of explanations and diagrams um, would do a fine job of answering this question. Item number 4, we're shown a diagram, and we need to explain how the diagram shows 3 divided by 5. Again, each of these bars here, though they are different colored in different parts, each represents a hole, so you have 3 holes. Oh, I'm sorry about that. And then each of those holes have been partitioned into 5 equal pieces. So that shows 5 divided by 3. Part B, I want students to explain how the diagram shows 3 multiplied by 1/5. Well, there's 1/5 here, 1/5 here, 1/5 here. That's 3 groups of 1/5, or 3 times 1/5. And then what is the value of 3 divided by 5? That's just going to be 3/5. Next question is similar. We want to explain how each of the following expressions are equal to the diagrams. I apologize that these are probably a bit small to see on your screen. But if we look at the diagram, we can see that there are 4 holes, and those 4 holes have been divided into thirds, and 2 of the thirds from each hole have been colored in. So altogether, the diagram represents 8 thirds. And so for A, they have the expression 2 multiplied by the quantity 4 divided by 3. And if we simplify that, 4 divided by 3 gives us 4 thirds, multiply 2 by 4 thirds, and we end up with 8 thirds. Expression B, 4 multiplied by 2 thirds. Again, if we simplify this, we'll get 8 thirds. And then lastly, expression C states 4 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 1/3. If we multiply that factor by factor, 4 by 2 is 8, and then multiply 8 by 1/3 gives us 8 thirds. So proving that each of those expressions gives us the value represented in the diagram is a sound way to defend the validity of each of those expressions. For each of these, we simply need to find the area. It's going to be important for students to remember on their tests that area of a rectangle is its length multiplied by its width. So starting with the rectangle shown in A, we have a length of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have a width of 1/3. So this is one piece colored out of 3, 1/3 of a whole. So we would multiply those together to give us 5 thirds for A. For B, the length is 3 holes. The width is 2/4. This could also be expressed as 1/2. And that would give us an area of 6/4. Our last question like this from number 6 Um, we have a length of 4 holes. Then we have a width of 1 hole plus 2/3. Now this skill right here is something that students learned a bit later in the unit. So I want to make sure that it's clear how to multiply a whole number and a mixed number. We need to make sure that the whole number factor is multiplied with each part of the mixed number. So in other words, we're using the distributive property here. 4 by 1 is 4. 4 by 2/3 is 8/3. So the area here would be 4 and 8/3. Of course, they could also simplify this further by turning 8/3 into a mixed number and adding that back to the 4 holes. That would be fine as well. Okay, so these are pretty straightforward. This is just multiplication. A wants us to multiply 1/5 and 10. That's just going to give us 10/5. For B, again, we want to make sure that we're multiplying the factor 4 by each part of 5 and 2/3. We want to make sure we're multiplying the 4 by 2/3 and we're multiplying the 4 by 5. So 4 and 5 is going to give us 20. 4 and 2/3 is going to give us 8/3. So 20 and 8/3 for B. And then C is pretty straightforward. We're just multiplying the numerator by the whole number. So in this case, it would be 65, and that's 65/4. All right, Mr. Smith, this is question 8. Mr. Smith picks up a 2-liter of Diet Mountain Dew on his way home. He drinks 1/3 of it during dinner. How much is left for him to drink the next day? We're finding 1/3 of 2 here. So we could divide 2 by 3, or we could multiply 2 by 1/3. Or students could represent the situation with a diagram or picture. These are each a hole, so we have 2 holes here to represent the 2 liters of dew. I'm going to divide each hole into thirds. I want to drink 1/3 out of each hole. So that equals 2/3, which is also what the quotient and the product are here. So 2/3 is the answer. Okay. Here, students just need to select all the expressions that would match the situation presented. Piece of string is 18 inches long. Jada cuts it into 4 equal pieces. What is the length of each part in inches? We can think of this tape diagram here as representing the 18 inches of ribbon. She's going to cut it into 4 equal pieces. So what did we do? Well, we took 18, we divided it by 4. So right off the bat, C is definitely correct because 18 divided by 4 is 18/4. D would also be correct. A is 4/18 is incorrect. It's not 4 divided by 18, it's 18 divided by 4, so B is incorrect. And then let's see, is 18/4 equal to 4 1/2? Well, it takes me 4/4 to make a hole. If I have 18/4, I can make 4 holes because 4 multiplied by 4 is 16. And then I would have 2 left over. Or 2/4, so 4 and 2/4, which equals 4 1/2. Because we have not talked about simplifying fractions, if a student did not recognize that E was correct, I'm not going to count that against them on the test. They may understand that 18/4 is equivalent to 4 and 2/4, but because we have not formally gone over simplifying fractions, their understanding may stop there, and that may cause them not to select E. And for that reason, I will not count against it will not count against their grade if they do not select E. However, if they did select A or B, of course, that would um, result in point deductions um, because those obviously don't match the situation. Um, so, highly recommend studying this video and the practice test. Students should be bringing those home tomorrow. Um, they will self grade them in class. Um, so I hope this video helps. Thank you for watching.